But thank you all so much for joining us. Best-selling author Thomas Perry will discuss his new thriller, Pro Bono, in this installment of Author Hour in Massachusetts. Thomas Perry needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. Thomas is the best-selling author of 32 novels, including the critically acclaimed Jane Whitefield series, The Butcher's Boy, which Parade included in its list of 101 best mystery books of all time, and Metzer's Dog, which NPR listeners selected as one of the 100 best killer thrillers of all time. His book, The Old Man, inspired the FX television series starring Jeff Bridges, John Lithgow, and Amy Brenneman. And Thomas lives in Southern California. I won't talk about the book's plot. I'll let Thomas do that. But I will leave you with this. So it's a nail-biting tale of conspiracy and pursuit from Thomas, who's a dominating force in the world of contemporary suspense thrillers. Pro Bono will have readers looking over their shoulders as constantly as they keep turning the page. So with all that said, Thomas, thank you so much for being here tonight. And folks, let's give Thomas a big virtual round of applause. So Thomas, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's a great opportunity.
Great. So, Thomas, before we get to Pro Bono, actually, I did solicit questions from the audience in advance, and I did get quite a few questions. So I will ask you a few questions from the audience to begin with, and then we will pivot to Pro Bono, which, by the way, folks, I finished Pro Bono this morning. Excellent book. Absolutely excellent book. So bear with me one second, Thomas, as I pull up my questions. Oh boy, what a mess I am. So Thomas, I did want to ask you, so you've written 9 Jane books, Jane Whitefield books. It's been roughly 5 years since the last one. When can we expect the 10th, the next Jane Whitefield book?
I was working on it about a half an hour ago. It's I've got a rough draft, and at the moment I'm going through and trying to make it into something that's let's say it's worthy of the other books in the series. And that's always kind of a little problem when you write a series, and what I really don't want is that someday I'm going to walk into a bookstore and somebody's going to say to me, I really love that series. I really wish you hadn't written that last one. It was terrible. So I'm working on it and trying to make it as good as possible. And I think my guess would be that it probably will be published around early January of next year, of 26.
So there we go, folks. You heard it here first. So perhaps this time next year we'll have our 10th Jane book. The other series that you're synonymous with, Thomas, that is super successful is the Butcher Boy books. I think you've published 4, and I think it's been, again, around 5 years or so since the last one, Eddie's Boy. Any idea where we stand with that series? Are we getting a book number 5 at some point?
Well, I don't know, the Butcher's Boy series is kind of an odd story, and that is that The Butcher's Boy was the first book that I had finished that I thought anybody who wasn't actually related to me by blood or marriage might actually enjoy reading. And that was in 1982. And the other books were written at a sort of sequence of about one every 10 years. And what happens is that I started writing the Butcher's Boy, and the Butcher's Boy was approximately my age. And so as I've gone through life, I've sort of thought and speculated, well, what would he be doing now? I'm 10 years older than I was the last time I visited him. What would he be thinking about? And so really, it's a series of books that were written over 40 years, and Uh, so now here we are. I'm not sure that I want to know what he's doing when he's about 80 or so, but we'll see. We'll see. Something always occurs. And
And so obviously, you've written, nearly 35 books or so. You're known for so many, wonderful books. One of the standalone books you're probably most known for is The Old Man, which you wrote in 2017. And it was made into what I thought was a super successful television series. But just last month, it got canceled after 2 seasons, despite all sorts of critical acclaim, including an Emmy nomination for Jeff Bridges. And I don't want to start off on a downer note, but any comment about the cancellation of the series and just the fact that your book was made into a really successful, popular TV series?
well, several questions. I mean, one of the things about it that I liked was that, and really didn't have any, I don't know, right to expect or demand was that they did a terrific job. They had wonderful actors. They spared no expense and no effort. It was really a series that I liked a lot. And of course, as always happens when a series is based on a book, it really doesn't take very long before they run out of book and start making up other things, or where the story is going to go after that. And so it got to be a kind of funny situation for me, because I was watching the show and wondering, what are my characters going to be doing this week? I had no idea where it was going to go each time. Uh, the scripts were all written by John Steinberg and Robert Levine, who just worked away quietly and made the series. It was a great experience. I enjoyed it a lot, and I was disappointed, as everyone was, I guess, that it wasn't picked up for the next season. But I can sort of feel at the end of it that it was good,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna be something I'll ever be ashamed of or anything like that. And I enjoyed it terrifically, and it was fun. It was just something that was pure fun for me, because by the time it actually hit the air, it was, what, I don't know, 4 years or so since I had written the book. So I'd already done all the work that I was going to do on it, and I could just sit back and enjoy it and cash the checks.
Did they invite you on set? Did you get to see any of the shooting, or were you at your home writing your next novel?
Well, they invited me, and I went. I don't know if there's no spoiler in something that's been canceled, but it it was a situation where John Lithgow and Jeff Bridges were never together until later in the series. So what I did, I visited twice. I visited one day when John Lithgow was doing a really a gigantic scene. It was actually 6 pages of dialogue that he was doing in this airplane hangar while Jeff Bridges was off being chased by other people. And I watched that, and I was terrifically impressed. And he was such a nice man. And I also, when I went the day that Jeff Bridges was doing the first scenes of that I had written, but had been rewritten as a TV series, and it was wonderful. I was really impressed with him too. It was terrific, and they were very welcoming and kind to me. And I had worked in television many years ago. My wife and I were writing partners, and so I knew what it was like to have somebody visiting the set when you're trying to make a deadline. And so as soon as it was, obvious that I was serving no purpose there, I left and let them get back to their work. But I did, have a chance to enjoy watching them do it. So
I did read in your Wikipedia bio, when you know you've made it big when you have your own Wikipedia bio, that you did some sort of work on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Is that true,
yeah.
Thomas? What did you and or your wife do there?
Well, we wrote one episode, and it was the one in which Worf's wife is killed.
Oh,
And
that's
it was an interesting experience. It was We were invited by somebody who had worked on another show with us, and actually been our boss at in the earlier show. It was Mike Piller, who was one of the producers of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and he said, do you want to do one of these? And so we enjoyed the show, so we went in and, as he said, did one of these.
yeah,
And
wonderful.
it's fun, but uh, it was not exactly like other shows were. When you're working on a television show, there's generally uh, a document called the Bible, in which they have all of the listings. They list what all of the episodes previously were and what the names of the characters were, and so on. But in Star Trek, what the Next Generation, what they had was also they had an anthropology of Star Trek. They had a physics of Star Trek. They had, different sections that would tell you what that world, well, I don't know, that universe in time was like, and that was, it was a whole separate study. So it was fun, and we enjoyed the experience. I had no idea that people would be interested for this long afterwards, but they are.
Yes,
Trekking.
I work with a lot of Trekkies, and yes, you're probably an answer to a trivia question out there.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's wonderful. So I know folks aren't here to listen to TV though. So let's get to pro bono. Just who knew accounting and financial fraud could be so exciting? Okay, and I'm wondering, Thomas, if you and I know this is like the question that all authors hate, but could you tell us a little bit about your new book? What do you want the audience to know about your new book?
Well, it is about a young um, lawyer in Los Angeles who has a history. And what his history consists of is that when he was a teenager, his mother, who was a widow, uh, remarried, and it was a marriage to a man who was a um, professional con man who would go around and marry women who had some money and systematically deplete their fortune or their uh, the money that was left to them or whatever. And he was a teenager, but he didn't trust this guy, and he was probably right not to trust him. And so what he did was to let's say help his mother save some of her money. 17 years later, he's a young lawyer in Los Angeles, and he's very, very good at recognizing and sort of righting the wrongs when someone is cheated, essentially, or embezzled or anything of that sort. He's very good at finding missing money and things of that sort. Um, he is a very successful young lawyer. And the next thing that happens is that a young woman comes into his office who is also a widow and who has with her a bunch of documents that indicate that she is a victim of a crime that's eerily similar to the one that happened to his mother when she was younger. And I should probably stop there.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Yes, we are spoiler free. I did like that your book had two, I guess, arguably three different storylines that sort of collide, and the way the book opens is just really really good storytelling. Those first few chapters, I think, really set the table for the rest of the book. So Thomas, I'm curious. Was there anything? So why write this book? What was the inspiration in writing this book?
Well, there's several things, really. One was that I wanted to write a book in which there were a few separate plots, which at the very end, or let's say near the end, you realize we're all absolutely interconnected in various ways, and they were, in a sense, one story. There was a review that came out just before the book was published by the Kirkus review. And what the person who wrote that review said was that it was a lumpy but irresistible thriller. And I like the idea that lumpy meaning that there are these three, you think it's over once, you think it's over twice, and the third time you realize, what's connecting them all. And that was really sort of a main inspiration. I also wanted to have a hero who's kind of an ordinary guy in a certain way. That is, he appears to be an unassuming and gentle person, but there's much more to him than criminals realize as it goes along. I mean, it's essentially three stories which are about different people and are, well, let's say they're about evil, different forms of evil that he has to overcome. So,
And Thomas, have you yourself ever been a victim of financial fraud?
yes, actually, I have been. That's a good question. I was once talked into purchasing a municipal bond that by a financial advisor, very much like the villainous financial advisors in the book, to buy this municipal bond because it was a great safe investment and it would pay off, and it was, had tax advantages and so on. And just fade out and then come back a year or so later, while the people who were selling that municipal bond were tried in a court in Seattle and sentenced to federal prison for several years. So that was an experience for me. I also this Christmas Eve, I apparently someone took a check that I had written for a bill, to pay a bill, stole the check out of the post office mailbox and washed it, and then wrote himself a check for $39,500, which prompted a phone call to me from the Bank of America. So, but he was being very clever because he was writing or trying to cash this check on Christmas Eve when he thought nobody would be, paying attention. He didn't realize that, banks are up 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. So
Yeah, I'm no expert, but I think banks have gotten so much better these last 5, 10 years regarding fraud. And I know every time I have to sign into anything bank related, I have two-way authentication, and I have to I have to verify who I am on my phone and on my computer. It's crazy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so at the start of your book, that first chapter, we meet Charles, and the swindler convinces the wife to kind of ship Charles off to a boarding school, I think in New Hampshire or something. And I think that's the closest Massachusetts reference we got was this boarding school in New Hampshire. I don't think we got a Massachusetts reference during the book, but I could have missed it. But and it was at that point where he decided he wanted to. I imagine that was around the time when he realized his mother was getting swindled out of all this money, that he wanted to become a lawyer. I'm wondering if you, at 16, 17, 18, did Thomas Perry know that he wanted to be an author?
I think I knew that I wanted to be an author when I was about 13,
So, Thomas,
which
what is your writing origin story?
my writing origin story. Well, I was the youngest child in a family which consisted of two teachers and an older brother and older sister. And my parents were teachers. My brother um, was a university professor eventually, not when I was a child, of course. And my sister was a teacher after that. And it seemed to me that that was an honest and honorable profession. And we were all interested in books and things. And I lived in a house where there were a lot of book shelves all over the place. And I was given to understand that anything that was important would eventually appear between two covers. And so I was interested in that. And also because my family members were all interested in very different subjects and different kinds of books, that was sort of fun too. And then the next thing that happened, of course, was that I realized that I was one of those people who had.
Thomas, I think we might have lost you, so we'll give it another couple of minutes here. I apologize, folks. We'll get Thomas right back. I think those California wildfires, I didn't mention this, but Thomas is actually joining us from California near Los Angeles. And so not sure if I know they're out, but I don't know if the wildfires damaged any of the Wi-Fi infrastructure. But while we wait for Thomas, if folks want to get any questions or comments in for Thomas, now might be a good time to do that. And for those who emailed comments and questions in advance, I promise I will do my best to get to them towards the end of the conversation. But we'll just give it a couple more minutes, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. Gotta love Zoom.
Okay.
All right, we're back after our little hiccup. I apologize, folks. So, Thomas, a question that I'm legally obligated to ask every author I interview. Are you a pantser or are you a plotter, Thomas?
I'm a pantser until I'm really right at the end of the first draft, and I sometimes will plot in order to real decide whether I have actually tied all the threads of the story up completely. So in other words, it's like sort of the way it is when I'm driving. I don't ask for directions until I'm pretty sure I'm lost. So that's the only plotting I really do. So.
And Thomas, have you ever considered writing something outside of the thriller, suspense, mystery genres, or are you is that your bread and butter and you're sticking with it?
Well, when I was younger, I wrote all kinds of different things. I wrote science fiction. I wrote, sort of historical stuff. It's, it was all there. It was all something that you might enjoy reading, or I enjoyed reading at the time, and that's really the thing that makes it appeal to you. And so I tried it and did it, and I enjoyed it. But what happens in a way, when you're first starting to write and you've never had any recognition and nobody has ever published anything of yours, what happens is you feel as though you're on the wrong side of a very high wall. And you look at it and sort of keep trying different things. And eventually a door opens in the wall and you go through that door because it's the only door that's open. And assuming that you don't get eaten by a dragon and when you go through the door, you're going to consider that, a comfortable place. And I, in a way, I had never thought that I was one particular thing or another, and didn't think that I was going to be a sort of part of a genre until it happened. That is, I wrote my first novel, The Butcher's Boy, and that novel won an Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers of America, and then I realized that whether I wanted to be it or not, I was a mystery writer because that was what was going on. And I enjoyed it, and I kept being curious about it and writing different kinds of things. And I guess it sort of stuck. It became a way of looking at things and a way of contemplating the things that I saw around me. That is, the book wasn't really ever just about some crime. It's also it's a place to put all the observations that you have as you wander through life, anything that you're thinking about. And part of the fun of it is trying to get better at what you're doing. But that's everybody wonders about the job. Well, the main part of the job is trying to learn to be a better writer. And, that involves things like uh, trying to describe a sunset over a large body of water or something of that sort. Each time you try to do it, you try to add something and do it better than you did it last time. Um, you try to I don't know, sort of convey that sense of I don't know, discomfort that you have when you're walking down a city street alone and it's dark and there's nobody there, nobody that you can see. Things like that. You try to be better at kind of conveying an impression of the human experience that we all have. Uh, and I'm sort of unhappy about genres because, in a way, they're not really. Nobody I know who's any good thinks of himself as a genre writer.
Sure.
They think they're writing about life, about the world that we live in, and genres are kind of they're a convenience for publishers and people who sell books because they have to have a way of kind of grouping things together and I don't know, creating or recognizing an audience that exists. Like, who would like this?
Right.
That sort of thing. And that plays no part in the writing.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, libraries over rely on genres as well, and there are so many books nowadays that fall within multiple genres. Thomas, I listened to an interview of yours recently where you had a nice line and something along. It was something, and of course I'm gonna get it wrong. But I think it was something like historians, tell you what happened. Novelists tell you how it felt. And I think your previous answer there really spoke to that. So, Thomas, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about pro bono. Then we can talk about the writing process in general, and then we'll get to some audience questions. And I promise to get you out of here by 8 o'clock Eastern. But so, Thomas, sort of big picture philosophical question: after reading pro bono, do you think does money corrupt people, or do corrupt people gravitate towards money? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's interesting because that really is something I have been thinking about. That's one of the reasons for the three different sets of situations in that book. That the very first one that you run into is somebody who does this professionally, does it over and over and over again, and is kind of, professional confidence men and women are, one of the things about them is that they will uh, take your very last dime. In other words, the limit of what they will do, what they will take from you, is never what's easy or what's convenient or what they can get away with. They will take everything if they can. They will leave you with absolutely, you know, just the clothes on your back if they can possibly do it. That is, they're absolutely, they don't feel, I think, that other people are actually real. They're just prey. They're a meal in a sense. Whereas there are other people, that I think the money actually kind of takes some people who are, at that moment in a weak situation, and they are tempted, and they, in a sense, the money creates the criminal. In a sense, it corrupts a person if they allow themselves to sort of take that one step, that single step, realizing that they can get something if they take it from someone else. And so it's different. It's each situation only happened once in a way.
So Thomas, I was reading the reviews for this book for pro bono, and you're above that coveted 4, so we're over the 4.0, so that's always good. So the vast majority of the folks enjoyed the book who reviewed it, and what was interesting was there were comments to the effect of, I'm glad he didn't get too caught up in the minutia of explaining all the financial crime. But then on the flip side, there were some people that thought that, gee, you kind of breezed over it and they wish you had talked about it more. So where's that fine line when you're talking about really complex issues and you're trying to keep the plot moving? Where do you draw the line between over explaining or under explaining complex financial laws and crimes?
Well, that's something that we all have to do by feel, I think. I mean, what I've always done is I've thought about writing um, as a situation where there's me, and then there's a person who's a friend who's sort of like me, male or female, whatever, a person who works hard during the day and who, enjoys hearing a good story at the end of it. And so what I do is I sit down and tell that person a story. And when you're actually face to face with somebody, you can also often kind of read the moment when they're getting bored with whatever it is that you're explaining. You're over explaining. You've gone too far. Okay. So you switch to the next part of the story. Well, because we're alone when we're writing, we don't get to really see what our ideal audience is gonna when they're going to begin to have their eyes glaze over. And so you just have to do it by feel. And usually that stuff is overwritten, and then you cut it back in your second draft. At the point when you're getting bored, your audience got bored a page ago. So you just have to make that decision. I think probably the number of people who wish I had given them more detail about these thefts probably is smaller than the number who,
Yes.
you know, wanted to just get on with it.
I agree. I agree with you, Thomas. So when writing thrillers, and when you're developing and writing the bad guys, the villains, the criminals, do you enjoy writing criminals who are dumb, or do you enjoy writing criminals who are cunning and conniving and often one step ahead. Because not to give spoilers away, but I thought there were a lot of dummies in this particular book.
Well, I wanted some of each. I wanted some, it's sort of villains, I think, probably run the gamut, from one to another. And, I had a friend years ago who was a Los Angeles assistant district attorney who had 27 years into, as a prosecutor. And he told me at one point, he said, there may be criminal geniuses, but in 27 years, I've never met one. So, but of course, there are some who are pretty clever. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, Thomas, we'll talk now a little bit about the writing process. I already asked you about, Pantser versus Plotter. Let me ask you this sort of generally. What do you think makes a great thriller? And how do you keep your novels fresh and unpredictable?
Well, I think part of it is starting out with the idea that if anybody is ever going to remember us for, writing something, it will be for that part of uh, the writing that was absolutely original. That is, each person will the measure of what they've contributed is stuff that has never been seen before and might never have ever been written if you hadn't been there to do it. Um, and if I were, go back to the idea of having a person that I'm telling a story to, I would start it out by telling them, I would like to tell you a story. And the only thing I can guarantee about it is that you have never read it before or heard it before or seen it in a filmed form before. And, I'm going to proceed and let you know what the story is. Um, and, I've tried very, very hard to not uh, not cross my own tracks. Not essentially, one of the things about us, about writers, is that they're like dogs. Um, if the dog does something and you praise the dog for it and give him a treat, um, the dog will try to do exactly the same thing in order to get the treat. And, we'll practice doing it and so on. And you want to not be like that, I think, if you're writing professionally, that you're tempted essentially if you have too much success too early, I think, to just keep doing the same trick and getting the same reward.
So, Thomas, I suspect there's probably some aspiring thriller writers on the line or who may stumble across this video on YouTube later. Uh, any additional writing advice for folks who wish to publish thriller books?
I think what's one of the things that we all have to keep reminding ourselves of is that it's supposed to be fun. That's what it's for. You're trying to, sort of in the Aristotelian vision, to please and to instruct. But I think what you really, what the purpose that you're fulfilling is most easy to evaluate on the pleasure principle. That is, is this a good experience that this person is reading your book? Are they having a good experience? Is it something that they're going to remember because they enjoyed it, and maybe because they were inspired to think new thoughts of their own, things like that? I think that's the important part. It's supposed to be fun.
So, Thomas, I'll ask you more questions about writing if we have time, but I do want to get to the audience questions as we only have about 10 minutes left. So, folks, if you have questions, now's the time to get them into the chat or the Q&A. And I'll also refer back to some questions that were emailed in advance. So Timothy wants to know, did your experience with the TV series The Old Man have any impact on your writing or how you think about the structure of your story, chapters, or characters?
Well, my wife and I were writing partners in television for 11 years. And I think you do learn some interesting and useful things writing for television. And, one of them is to learn, when a scene is over. That is when um, it's time to switch to something else. That is, um, a kind of brevity. And another thing is that you learn to write dialogue that sounds like dialogue that someone can say. And that is, often when we're writing a novel, we forget that, somebody's supposed to be saying this. And it's a good corrective of that is television, but another good corrective of it is to simply read it out loud to yourself. Does it sound like a conversation, or does it sound like an author trying to sneak a bunch of exposition into a scene so that he doesn't have to, come out with it in another way? And a third thing really is, and I've noticed actually years ago studying Faulkner that, had learned some things about writing movies because, he was really a very skilled writer in Hollywood. He worked for Howard Hawks primarily. And what it is things don't simply happen. Somebody sees them happening. Somebody is experiencing them. But in terms of writing for the screen, the camera, what does the camera see? Where is the eye that sees all of this stuff, and from what angle are they seeing it, and what does it look like from here? And I think, those are all things that you can use in writing fiction. So
Yeah. So Carol Ann is a fellow graduate. She's a Cornellian. Is that the right word there? She says go Big Red. She says I enjoy how Cornell was worked into Jane Whitefield's backstory. Does Cornell show up in any of your other non-Jane Whitefield novels? And if so, which ones?
uh, I don't think it does in any of the other books. I don't remember anything
Right.
about that. Uh, Jane is kind of a quintessential resident of New York State, upstate New York. That is, she's a person who um, sort of lives there. Her family, let's say ancestors who have lived in that part of the state of New York for, you know, probably 10,000 years. And it's because Jane is descended from the Senecas, and so Cornell was sort of an obvious thing that I could write about because I went to college there, um, but also something that Jane would be aware of, and so I had her be a graduate of Cornell. Also, her husband in the Jane books, Carrie McKinnon, is also a graduate there, and she knew him when she was in college.
Well, Thomas,
So
my condolences if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. Not sure, but that was a tough one on Sunday. Um, they were playing the Chiefs and the refs. So
yeah.
Liz wants to know: will you be coming to Buffalo soon? Perhaps research for Jane to update your knowledge.
Well, um, actually, I made an unfortunate, sad trip to
Oh,
the area this fall. With my sister died, and so I went back, to be with the family and her old friends and so on. And she lived in the small town of where we were brought up, Tonawanda. And I was very strange because I remember, I found myself in the funeral home, surrounded by her high school friends. She was 79 when she died, and um, so so it was an interesting multi-generational experience.
Yeah. So Liz,
So,
who asked the question, does say my condolences to you and your family.
thank
Um,
you.
Ron wants to know, what writers do you enjoy reading, Thomas?
Well, I would have to say, I guess my all-time favorite is probably still William Faulkner. I don't do anything that's remotely like Faulkner. Uh, sort of a, I guess that's my homage to him, is to leave him alone,
There you
not
go.
plunder his work. But of modern people, the first one that comes to mind is I just got a book sent to me that is the next book of Dion Meyer. Dion Meyer is the South African novelist. Um, the new book is called Leo. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but he's somebody that I admire very much. Um, his sense of suspense is almost unparalleled. I mean, if you read his novel 13 Hours, in which this woman is essentially being chased for the entire length of the book, which is 13 hours, um, you know, your heart is in your mouth. It's just incredible. You know, that's wonderful. And, I also have always been partial to John le Carré. Um, and, he's gone, but there's plenty to read
Oh,
in his books. And one of the things about him is that he did the best interrogation scenes that I think that I've ever seen anywhere in any book. Um, in the Smiley series, the Smiley books, he, it's just incredible and well worth reading if you want to learn how to write better. Um, I don't know. I run across all kinds of things in a more contemporary vein at times. There's a writer named Patrick Hoffman who wrote a book called um, "Every Man a Menace." Was the one that I'm thinking of. Um, that was really remarkable for its complexity and how tight it is. And he's written several other books. I haven't read them, but that was the one that I um, really kind of can't help mentioning.
mhm.
And um, I don't know, other.
Well, you've given us three good names right there. And so, Thomas, as we start to wind down, as we're approaching the 1 hour mark, let me ask you, where can folks find out more about you, Thomas? Does somebody of your caliber really have to be active on social media? I don't know, but are you on social media? Do you have a website? Do you have a newsletter? How can we learn more about you?
Um, well, I do have a website. It's thomasperryauthor.com.
Mhm.
And that's occasional things of that sort. And also I'm on Facebook and what used to be Twitter. But the easiest thing to do is, if somebody wants to write to me, is um, just write through the website. That's,
Yeah,
I
that's how
get
I
those
got in
and
touch with
I do
Thomas. Yeah.
answer them.
Yeah. Thomas himself answers his own fan mail. So, folks, let's give Thomas a big virtual round of applause for a great conversation. Thomas, was there anything? I'm kind of a rookie at this. I'm usually the tech person behind the scenes. Was there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything you want to let the audience know before we wrap up?
Um, Not that I know of. I mean, I think you've hit all the main points, and I think also that I should be given credit for being a master of suspense when I disappear off the screen for several minutes, and I think
Yes.
that you deserve the credit for carrying on as though nothing had happened.
Yes, that was very suspenseful. You're right about that. That was quite the twist. So I didn't see that one coming, Thomas. You're still I finished your book this morning and you're still giving me twists and turns here. But Thomas, great job as usual. Thank you so much for being so giving of your time, especially as you're trying to finish the 10th book. So really appreciate that. Folks, look for an email from me later tonight with the recording, as well as information about some other upcoming virtual programs. And please go out and buy a copy of Pro Bono, or at the very least, borrow it from your local library. If you're going to buy it, try to support local bookstores. Wellesley Books is the one that we're affiliated with, and I will include a link to Wellesley Books in the follow-up email. So please take the feedback survey as well when you exit the Zoom. So thank you all so much, and everyone have a great rest of their day. Thomas, you and your family stay safe in California, okay?
We'll do our best.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Bye.